She was everything I asked for, but it still wasn't enough. At night, I'd watch her sleep, feeling like a stranger in our own bed. The guilt hadn't started yet, just the emptiness. Something inside me itched for more, for danger, for attention. I kept telling myself it was harmless, just a message, just a look. But deep down, I knew where this road led. Her breathing was steady. Mine wasn't. And that night, I picked up my phone and replied to a man I barely knew. His message said, "You up?" And I was. His hands didn't tremble like mine did. He touched me like he owned me, and I let him. In that car, I wasn't a wife. I was a secret. His cologne was too strong. My wedding ring burned on my finger. I told myself it was just once to feel alive again. I didn't cry until after he dropped me off. I sat in the shower for an hour, scrubbing his scent off my skin. But guilt doesn't wash off that easily. And the worst part? I wanted more. She smiled at me like nothing had changed, like I hadn't betrayed her just 6 hours ago. She poured my coffee, just the way I liked it, and all I could do was nod and pretend. My hands shook when I took the cup. She said, "Rough night?" I said, "Couldn't sleep." I wanted to confess. God, I did. But I swallowed it like poison, slow and burning. She kissed my cheek and walked away, and I stood there, wishing she hated me already. The second man was smoother, colder, like a mirror to my worst self. He didn't ask about my life, and I liked that. We didn't talk much, just touched, just lied. Each kiss felt like a nail in the coffin I was building for myself. I stared at the ceiling while he whispered things I wanted to hear. My heart wasn't in it, but my body betrayed me anyway. Afterward, I checked my phone like a criminal at a crime scene. 10 missed calls, all from her. I told him I had to go. He laughed, and I hated how right he was too. The rain matched my mood. Cold, relentless, punishing. I couldn't bring myself to go home. Every time she texted, I felt like the floor beneath me cracked wider. Her message blinked on my screen. "Where are you?" I typed, "Just needed air," then deleted it. I typed, "I'm sorry," deleted that too. I settled on silence, the coward's choice. My breath fogged the glass as I watched my reflection disappear. I imagined walking through the front door and telling her everything. But then what? Could she ever look at me the same again? Number 3 made me laugh, and I hated him for it. He reminded me what it felt like to be wanted. Not needed, just wanted. The guilt was still there, but it quieted when the music was loud. He told me I had dangerous eyes. I told him he didn't know the half of it. I danced like no one knew me, like I was someone else entirely. He bought me another drink, and I let him touch me where no one else was looking. I kept thinking about her hands, and how different they felt. The night blurred, but my regret sharpened. Even as I kissed him goodbye, I knew I'd see him again. Because regret doesn't always stop you. Sometimes it drives you straight into the fire. She held our photo like it still meant something. Her thumb brushed over my face in the frame, and I nearly collapsed. I watched her from the doorway, unable to step forward. I wanted to scream, to fall to my knees and beg. But instead, I just stood there, a ghost in my own home. "I miss you," she said, not knowing I was right there. "How do you forgive someone who hasn't confessed yet?" She looked up and smiled when she saw me, and I lied with a kiss on her forehead. She deserved the truth, but I kept giving her silence. By the 4th, I didn't even know why I was still doing it. It wasn't about love anymore, just numbness. I stood outside the door, shaking, hoping no one would answer. But I knocked anyway. Every step I took was another betrayal she'd never see coming. He opened the door shirtless, like he'd been waiting. I said, This is the last time." He just smiled. We both knew it was a lie. Even as I undressed, guilt clung to me like a second skin. And still, I let him touch me. I stopped wearing my ring at night. It didn't feel right on my finger anymore. I told myself it was to keep it safe, but I was the danger. Every morning, I stared at it like a curse I chose to carry. I wondered if she could smell them on me, the ghosts I brought home. She never said anything. That was the worst part. Maybe she trusted me too much. Maybe she saw it all and stayed silent. I used to love silence. Now, it was suffocating. I wanted to confess, not to be forgiven, just to be seen. But every time I opened my mouth, fear won again. "You don't look okay," she said, breaking the silence. I smiled, fake, practiced, just tired. Nee. But my hands told the truth, trembling around the spoon. "Are you seeing someone?" she asked, her voice low. I froze. That word, someone. If only it were just one. I said no, too fast, too sharp. She looked at me like she knew everything, even if I hadn't said a word. She reached across the table and held my hand, warm, real. And for a second, I wanted to confess to her, not my wife. But guilt kept its grip on my throat. I just nodded and sipped the lie. The fifth one didn't even look at me afterward. We lay in silence and it felt like punishment. He wasn't gentle. He wasn't cruel. Just empty. I thought hitting bottom would feel louder, but it was so quiet. I wanted him to say something, to judge me, to hurt me. Instead, he got up and walked to the shower like I wasn't real. I curled into a ball, ashamed of what I'd become. This wasn't rebellion. This was self-destruction dressed as desire. I whispered her name into the pillow, hoping it would cleanse me. But I was too far gone, and I knew it. I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror anymore. Her eyes looked older. Her smile was gone. I wiped the glass, but it didn't change anything. The truth was etched into my face like guilt carved into stone. I used to believe love was enough to keep me whole, but I broke it over and over, and she still didn't know. I ran the water, hoping the sound would drown my thoughts. I whispered, "Stop," to myself, again and again. But desire and shame had become a cycle I couldn't break. And deep down, I feared I didn't deserve to. I opened a blank message, ready to confess everything. My fingers hovered, shaking, terrified and desperate. How do you start destroying someone you love with the truth? I typed, "I need to tell you something." Yes, T. Then I stared at it and hit backspace. My stomach twisted like it wanted to scream for me. She deserved the truth, but I kept giving her my silence. The clock ticked past midnight. I hadn't moved. I wanted her to ask, so I wouldn't have to say it first. But she never did. "Whose is this?" she asked, holding the shirt like a weapon. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I could lie. I could cry. I could run. But all I did was stare at her, like I'd been caught in a trap I built. "Tell me the truth," she said, her voice cracking. I nodded slowly, the weight of every night collapsing at once. She dropped the shirt. It hit the floor like a gunshot. My voice was barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry." Yeah. Her eyes filled with betrayal, but she didn't scream. She just said, "Get out." And I did. I moved out that night with nothing but guilt and clothes I didn't want. The silence in this new place was different. It was deserved. I didn't try to call. She wouldn't answer. And I wouldn't blame her. Every man, every moment, played in my head like punishment. I had everything, and I burned it all to the ground. She wasn't perfect, but she was real. And I traded her for lies and skin, and secrets. Now all I had was cold walls and echoing regrets. I stared at my phone, hoping her name would appear anyway. It didn't. 2 weeks passed before I let myself go back. I didn't knock. I didn't call. I just stood across the street like a ghost. The lights were on. She was home. She was moving on. Part of me wanted to run to her, beg again, but the other part knew the chapter was already closed. I thought she'd come outside, that maybe somehow she'd feel me there, but she didn't, and I didn't blame her. I whispered her name once, and it hurt more than any goodbye. The rain soaked through my coat like her absence soaked into my bones. So I turned and walked away. I started writing it all down, not to explain, but to remember. Every man, every lie, every silent scream I buried. It wasn't passion. It wasn't thrill. It was pain masked in hunger. I wrote her name 50 times, then burned the page. Love doesn't always die in anger. Sometimes it just fades in grief. I tried to drink it away. Didn't work. I stared at her old photo and whispered, "You were right to leave. I see. Maybe she'll never forgive me. Maybe I'll never forgive myself. But this was how I grieved what I destroyed. And maybe that's all I deserve now. I came here to feel the wind, something that couldn't lie to me. No noise, no people, just the ache of the world beneath my feet. This was never about them. It was always about me. My flaws, my cravings, my fear of being seen too clearly. She saw me once, and I ran from it. Now I live with the echo of everything I broke. The wind howled like it wanted to push me forward, but I just stood there, frozen in the truth. I never stopped loving her. I just didn't know how to be loved. And that's the part that'll haunt me forever.